Thank you very much. Thanks. Welcome to the meeting of the full council meeting of East Renfrewshire Council, and I hope that people will find today's proceedings interesting. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be stored as part of the Council's webcast archive and be capable of repeated viewing. I have the discretion to terminate or suspend filming if, in my opinion, allowing filming to be continued would prejudice the proceedings of the meeting. Members are reminded that the cameras are activated by the sound system and that you must switch on your microphone when speaking, and also, very importantly, please switch off immediately when you finish speaking. It's really important that what you have to say is heard and recorded. So if by accident, because it can happen when you're trying to look at the laptop and you're trying to think of what you're going to say, that you might not switch on your microphone, I would ask you to stop and to start again so that what you have to say is recorded. And it's also important that you remember to switch off the microphone once you've finished speaking. So we'll get on with the rest of the meeting now, and thank you very much for your cooperation as well. It would be also helpful if you looked at your colleagues' microphone, and we'll keep everybody right. So number 1 in the programme of business in our agenda is to report apologies for absence.
Thank you, Provost. There are no apologies intimated.
Thank you very much. And on to item number 2, which is the declarations of interest. The Councillors' Code of Conduct requires elected members to declare any financial or non-financial interest they may have in any of the items on the agenda. Are there any such declarations? No one is indicating. Thank you very much. Item 3. The minute of the meeting of the 29th of June 2022, minute volume pages 69 to 86, is submitted for approval and signature only. Does someone want to move that as a correct record, please? Or is it agreed? Agreed. All round. Great. Thank you very much. On to item 4. The minutes of meetings of the 30th of June to the 6th of September. And Eamon, is this the one that there might be an error in? If you could speak to that, please.
Thank you, Provost. Just to draw members' attention to the fact that the minute of the 1st of September Cabinet, which was in your minute volume, showed the incorrect date initially of the 18th of August. That has now been corrected. So there was no substantive changes to the minute. It was just that the meeting date was incorrect, but that has now been amended. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eamon. So there's a list of the page numbers for the minute volume. And the first one after the full council meeting is the Planning Applications Committee, which is on page 87 to 90. Agreed? Thank you. The next? Sorry?
Any questions?
Oh, are there any questions on the minute?
No.
Okay, there aren't any. On to the local review body, which is on page 91. Can we agree the minute? Are there any questions? None indicated. Do you want to speak, Councillor Cunningham? Oh, agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. That's great. The Audit and Scrutiny Committee of the 11th of August, which is page 95. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. The Licensing Committee, page 101 of the 16th of August. Agreed? Thank you. The Cabinet of the 18th of August, page 105. Agreed? Yeah. The Planning Applications Committee of the 24th of August, which, oh, sorry, Councillor Ireland, was this the Planning Applications Committee? Good. Okay, then I'll switch off and let you speak.
Thank you very much. It was just a question to Eamon regarding this one. I think it's pages 117 to 126. We're still in the middle of that meeting. Will the second half of the meeting, will that come up as a separate minute, or will it not be better to have it all as 1 minute?
Well, it will be a separate minute, but the minute will be reflected as the reconvened.
Sorry, could I ask you to switch off your microphone? Just if we get into the way of doing that. Sorry to interrupt. Okay. Thank you.
It will be a separate minute, Councillor Ireland, but it will be recorded as the reconvened meeting of the Planning Applications Committee, which took place on the previous date.
You okay with that, Councillor Ireland? Anything else?
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On to the Education Committee of the 24th of August, and that's on page 127. Can we agree the minute? Thank you. The Cabinet of the 1st of September, page 133. Agreed? Agreed, thank you. The Appointments Committee of the 5th of September, page 141. Agreed? Thank you very much for that. Right, on to the next agenda item now. And that's, got that one done. Item 5, items remitted to the Council. The first one is the Annual Treasury Management Report for 21-22. I'm not sure what page that is on for people to try and follow. But if you've all got it, then that's great.
Page 7 of the papers.
Sorry, it's
page 7 of the papers.
Page 7, that's great. Thank you very much. The report's been remitted from the Audit and Scrutiny Committee with a recommendation that the organisations listed at Appendix 7 be approved for the investment of surplus funds. Councillor Morrison, is this the one that you would want to speak to?
I have no comment to make at this stage, Provost. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs McCrossan, would you speak to this one, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. When we put the papers up to Audit and Scrutiny, the item that we need referred on to Council is Appendix 7, where we approve a list of organisations, banks and such for the investment of Council funds. We update that list regularly, and we've noticed that although we had updated the list for a number of the banks, one of the banks was not updated. So the sum that we're asking the Council to approve for investment in the Standard Chartered Bank is a maximum limit of £10 million, whereas the papers as they stand just now in the papers are listed as £5 million, which was the previous limit for Standard Chartered Bank. So I'm just asking you, when you're approving the amounts, if we can approve the Standard Chartered Bank as a 10 million limit rather than a 5 million limit. And apologies for that.
Are there any questions? Councillor Bamforth.
Can I just check, is it only that appendix? So we cannot ask Mrs McCrossan any other questions about the report?
The only matter that's before the Council that's been remitted from the committee relates to the appendix and the approval of the organisations for the surplus funds, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to item 5.2. There's a nomination of a co-opted member and substitute co-opted member on the IJB, which is the Integrated Joint Board Performance and Audit Committee. So the Audit and Scrutiny Committee have recommended that Councillors MacDonald and Wallace be appointed as the co-opted member and the substitute co-opted representative respectively. Can we agree? Councillor Bamforth.
Sorry, I'm just being a bit pedantic. It's actually the Integration Joint Board, not the Integrated Joint Board.
No, thank you very much. Thanks. Integration Joint Board. I sit corrected. Thanks very much. So we're agreeing the nominations and the substitute. Great. Thank you very much. And the next one is the General Fund Capital Programme. And this report has been remitted from Cabinet with a recommendation that the movements in project phasing across the 10-year capital programme and the movements within the 2022-23 programme be approved.
No question.
Are there any questions? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Provost. With reference to page 52 and the Capital Fund programme as scheduled for the Eastwood Park Leisure Centre, the £55 million, would we potentially have a more detailed breakdown of what that £55 million consists of? It is quite a sum of capital investment, and we all have a duty to ensure that best value is being delivered upon by the Council. And I'm aware of other comparable leisure centres in the private sector. For example, one not far away from here, which was reported, has only cost £9.9 million, and that's at the luxury end of the market. Also, Tollcross Leisure Centre in the east end of Glasgow, which was extensively refurbished for the Glasgow 2014 Commonwealth Games at a cost of £13.8 million. So I think that it would benefit us all to investigate where that £55 million is coming from in a lot more detail. My second question, Provost, is the £2 million designated for the 22-23 year. As construction hasn't started yet, what is the nature of that £2 million? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morrison. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Provost. On the £55 million, that was the amount that was previously agreed by Council in the last budget round. At the moment, those numbers have not been revised or looked at in detail, but that would have been revised by previous Council at that stage. I would draw attention to the comments in the General Fund Capital Programme and the Housing Capital Programme that obviously inflation is soaring at the moment and will be subject to review accordingly. But at this stage, we have no further updated detail beyond what members have already received. And could you please explain your second point on the £2 million? I didn't understand the question.
Certainly, Councillor O'Donnell. On page 52 in the column 2022-23, budgeted spend, capital spend, we're looking at a sum of £2 million against Eastwood Park. Just wonder what the nature of that cost is, considering, well, we're sitting not far away from here just now, and there's obviously no activity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morrison. I believe that Mr Cahill will respond to this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. The simplest way to explain this is that partly that would be due to fees incurred because it's such a large project and involves the appointment of external consultants, but I can also confirm that a full options appraisal and report with all the background detail will be submitted to the Council in October.
Any further questions or points, Councillor Morrison?
I'm quite happy with that, Provost, and thank you, Mr Cahill.
Thank you, Mr Cahill. Now, I understand I see people who are indicating they wish to speak, so I'll just check that I've got everybody. So it was Councillors Bamforth, Councillor Ireland, correct? You wish to speak in this? And Councillor Wallace?
No, it's been answered by you.
All right, thanks. So 2 councillors so far. Over to you now, Councillor Bamforth.
Thank you, Provost. Can I ask Mrs McCrossan about page 24 about the Kirkhill rewire, which the project has been deferred. I know some work was done, I think, 2 years ago. I'm just seeking assurance that the rewire is something that is not essential at the moment for safety, and that just the scope of it, and will it come back definitely if it's something that's been, because I believe this has been on the on the programme for a couple of years at least now.
I can't comment on this technical assessment of it, but all of the projects have been reviewed in the light of the pressures that we're facing at the moment And education and our property colleagues have liaised on this and determined which ones are the highest priority and most in need of being taken forward, and we'll just be keeping that under review as we go forward into next year. As I say, we're still highlighting that the total cost that we've got set aside for that project hasn't changed. It's just we're not able to take it forward in this financial year.
Anything else, Councillor Bamforth? Okay. Councillor Ireland?
Thank you very much, Provost. It's couple of questions, page 24, Learning and Leisure in Neilston. I note that it says revised phasing has resulted in a reduction in the 2022-23 expenditure and further movement across future years. Can you tell me what these changes in movement are, if there's anyone that can answer that, across future years and what form that's going to take and why? And then on page 24, Eastwood Park Leisure, again, it's a very similar question. It's saying that it's likely further phasing will be required on the project and costs and timings become clearer. What likely rephasings will take place, and when do you anticipate information on this? Because if I'm perfectly honest, if I'm listening to the question from the Conservatives and the answer from Labour's leader, I'm slightly concerned for this project. But if you could maybe just answer on those 2 points, please. That one might be best to Mr. Cahill.
Mr. Cahill, could you respond to those points, please? Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of Eastwood Park Leisure, as I've already said, that will be subject to a full report to the October meeting of the Council, which will explain all the background information about rising inflation, information about rising material costs, what the implications are for the Council, and how we would want to phase any expenditure subject to the Council's decision. In relation to Learning and Leisure in Neilston, I think Mr. Dawes is on the call tonight, who may be able to help with your question regarding the phasing.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. The reason the phasing has been deferred slightly is when the tender process was undertaken, it took a little longer than normal, which meant the start site was delayed, which means a lot of the expenditure has been delayed slightly, but the overall outcome will not be impacted. And hopefully that answers your question. But if you require any further detail, we'll be happy to provide it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dawes. Councillor Ireland?
No, that's great. Thank you very much, Mr. Cahill, Mr. Dawes.
Okay, can we agree the report? Agreed. Thank you. Move on to the next item, which is the Housing Capital Programme. The report has been remitted from the Cabinet with a recommendation that the movements within the 2022-23 programme be approved. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Provost. It's on page 73, and I don't know if any officers here that can maybe give me an answer, and it's probably very quick. It's the internal elements renewals, including kitchens, bathrooms and doors. I noticed that previously this figure was at 1,392,000, and now the adjusted figure is 1,878,000. If you could tell me what is the cause of this increase, and is it a single contractor, or is it a series of contractors that it's gone out to? Thank you very much.
Mr. Dawes, could you respond to the question, please?
Of course, Provost. I think in order to ensure accurate information is provided, I won't answer that question straight away, but I will revert back to the member and provide that information.
That's very helpful. Thank you. If that could be said. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Can we agree the report? Agreed. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on there. So, stand in the corner, so I'm just going to start again. Apologies all round. So, item number 6, thank you, the notice of a motion. 2 notices of motion. The motion number 1 is being proposed and seconded by Councillors Buchanan and Merrick, and the second motion is being proposed and seconded by Councillors Ireland and Bamforth. So, I would like to invite the mover of the first motion to read it out. Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Provost. The first motion, I think it's self-explanatory, but I'll read it out and then add some comments. That East Renfrewshire and its residents are suffering due to the cost of living crisis. The Conservative cost of living crisis is spiralling out of control due to continuing damaging decisions imposed by Westminster, including Conservative austerity cuts, tax hikes and Brexit. At a time when East Renfrewshire families are going to be thousands of pounds worse off, it is disgraceful that the Conservatives are hitting people's incomes further by raising regressive taxes like national insurance and VAT, slashing universal credit by £1,040 and scrapping the triple lock on pensions. On the 6th of April 2022, the Government increased national insurance by 1.25 percentage points, which is projected to cost some East Renfrewshire families hundreds of pounds additionally per year. Council also notes the recent figures provided by the Trussell Trust, recording that 197,037 food parcels were distributed to Scottish residents between April 2021 and April 2022, with 70,040 being distributed to children. On Ofgem has increased the energy price cap by 80%. Price cap is expected to reach 3,576 in October, and we now know the figures, rising to 4,799 in January and finally hitting 6,089 in April. In the light of the increased energy price cap, the average standard tariff energy bill will increase by £693 per year. The average prepay meter energy bill will increase by £708 per year, according to Ofgem figures. Inflation could soar as high as 18.6% by the start of 2023, and of course the Conservative government has suspended the pensioners' triple lock for 22-23, meaning that East Renfrewshire's pensioners will see a below-inflation increase. Further, they have removed the relied-on £20 universal credit uplift. Council believes under this government people are seeing tax hikes, energy bills soaring and petrol costs and food prices rising dramatically. The Conservative government has failed to tackle the cost of living crisis. Therefore, this Council declares a cost of living emergency. Council resolves to declare the cost of living emergency. As part of this, Council calls on ERC's leader to contact the UK Government and request that they scrap the rise in the energy price cap, double the energy grant to £800 and bring forward payments to the beginning of October, introduce as a matter of urgency an emergency price cap for small and medium-sized businesses, bring in a further windfall tax and extend this to include all large businesses who made significant profits during the pandemic. Council instructs the Council leader to write to the UK Government to express the Council's concerns. Furthermore, Council calls for a cross-party internal review into what the Council can offer East Renfrewshire families struggling with the cost of living emergency. With the input of stakeholders, including Citizens Advice, food banks, local trade unions and chambers of commerce.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buchanan. And I'll, if you could put your microphone off and I'll stop you there. The procedure is, and you have done that, is read out the motion. And now I'll ask Councillor Merrick to confirm that you're the seconder of the motion, but not to speak to it yet. We'll get to that later. So you're seconding the motion.
I'm seconding the motion.
Good.
Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. And now I'll ask if there are any amendments to the motion. Councillor Wallace. And do you have a seconder? I'll ask while I've got the microphone on. That's Councillor Morrison. Okay, and the same procedure. Oh, sorry. Are there any further amendments?
Yeah.
And there are. Councillor O'Donnell. And is there a seconder for Councillor O'Donnell's amendment?
I'll second it, Roberts.
Okay, so now, if we can hear from Councillor Wallace for the first amendment, please.
The First Amendment, as in the US Constitution. Okay, sorry, right. The Conservative amendment to motion number 1 is that East Renfrewshire Council, in recognising the unprecedented support for both business and families provided by the Westminster Government during lockdown, welcome the anticipated measures that will be put in place by our new Prime Minister to help mitigate the effects of the global cost of living crisis on its residents.
Thank you very much, Mr. Councillor Wallace. And I should have said that the mover of the motion has 10 minutes to speak. Everybody else who speaks is allowed 5 minutes. And then at the end of the debate, the mover of the motion will be asked to sum up for 5 minutes. So that's the first amendment now. And can we hear the second amendment now, please?
Thank you, Provost. That East Renfrewshire and its residents are suffering due to the global cost of living crisis and the after effects of the COVID pandemic on economic recovery. Council notes that only the UK and Scottish governments have the financial firepower and fiscal tools to significantly alleviate these burdens for the residents of East Renfrewshire. However, this Council will not stand by and ignore the hardships faced by its residents. To that end, Council calls for the creation of a cross-party group to review the plans that are currently being developed to help East Renfrewshire families struggling with COVID recovery and the cost of living crisis, with the input of stakeholders across the voluntary sector, including Citizens Advice, VAER, food banks, faith groups, and local trade unions and chambers of commerce, and notes that the first cross-party meeting has been scheduled for 27th of September in advance of detailed proposals to be reviewed and approved by Cabinet on 13 October.
Thank you very much. And can you just confirm, I think it was Councillor Devlin seconded it? So we have the motion and 2 amendments. So, Eamon will keep me right. We'll go to the mover of the motion to open the debate, which is, you have 10 minutes, Councillor Buchanan.
I'll not take the 10 minutes, you'll be glad to know, given the length of the motion. But what I will begin with is that the first warning sign was late last October, when the UK government accepted that the winter of 2021-22 would be very difficult. Since then, bills have increased astronomically. The Bank of England is warning that inflation could reach 11% within the next few weeks, let alone months. And almost half of UK households state that their financial situation is worse than at the start of the pandemic. We are in a cost of living crisis. There is a high risk of collapse in the resilience of our communities. Millions could be pushed into poverty, and businesses are struggling to remain viable. And our economy is being pushed into recession. Action on a scale at least similar to the COVID response is required urgently, and indeed should have happened before now. Colleagues, I think the motion speaks for itself. It highlights what requires to be done, and as yet, despite the Conservative amendment, there are still no major announcements on what additional finance or funding or support will be put in place in order to alleviate the many items that we've just discussed are just raised in terms of the cost of living crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very That's one each, Councillor. Councillor Merrick, you have 5 minutes if you wish to speak to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I will speak to the motion and I won't take the full 5 minutes. I hope. Of course, these aren't just the concerns of the Council, these are the concerns of the real people and families who live in East Renfrewshire. That is the people who elected all the councillors here to represent them and their interests. Now, my inbox, and I know those of my party colleagues, and I'm sure the inboxes of all other councillors, are chock-a-block full of people, worried residents, concerned about the future. It isn't some abstract worry, and it deserves a lot more than the latest Conservative incumbent of 10 Downing Street. It deserves a lot more than that abstract, "We will weather this storm." These are real concerns that people are feeling now. And we think that the person who has got their hands on all the fiscal levers should be asked to help, not just the residents of East Renfrewshire, but we're speaking here for the residents of East Renfrewshire, to put in place mitigation to this storm, as if it's some kind of abstract thing. Let's get some meat in that bone. How will we weather a storm without running up debts for hard-working people for generations to come? How will we protect jobs? What about people with mortgages? How, in the name of goodness, are people going to pay mortgages on top of all this stuff that's going on? And how do other countries seem to be not quite as bad? So I support the motion, and I'll just stop it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Merrick. We'll now go to the proposer and seconder of the amendment, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Provost. Again, this won't take long. The reason for the amendment here is when I look at this motion, this is really just it's a motion that belongs in a sixth-form debating society. This is the politics of division. This is the politics in which this is a time when we should all be actually getting together and actually finding the solutions. Councillor Merrick there talked about the inbox from East Renfrewshire residents. Yes, we're, I'm sure, all exactly the same. I'm happy to say in my inbox I got a communication from the Prime Minister, which kind of starts off saying, Gordon, I'm immensely grateful for your support throughout the leadership campaign, etc., etc. But to get to the guts of what this is all about, what she is saying is that she will begin work immediately to deliver a bold Conservative plan for Britain with 3 key early priorities. The first one being rapid action on energy bills to help people through the months ahead while tackling the root cause of the energy crisis. She does go on about mentioning about cutting taxes, slashing red tape, and about the NHS on a firm footing, but as we know, these last 2 are more devolved responsibilities. But the key one here, and really as far as this SNP motion is concerned, is I think we've fully addressed this. And let's get serious about what's going on here and start of this. This is, as I say, sixth form debating society stuff here. This is serious, what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor Morrison, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Gladly. Thank you, Provost. I'm supporting the amendment this evening because, I have to be honest with you, this is a very serious issue and this will be of great concern to many of our constituents across East Renfrewshire. And whilst the spirit of the SNP's motion is that there should be a cross-party working relationship, I have to say the other streams of paragraphs of it are not cross-party. It reads more like your typical boilerplate anti-Conservative output that you expect from the SNP. And I don't think it's actually a serious attempt to redress the problems that our people are facing, because there are 2 words which are omitted from this page and a half, and those words are Scottish Government, the organisation which has used vast powers over Scotland for the last 15 years, including powers over energy, oil, gas, which always has something to say against, for example, new nuclear power stations, which are ultimately the solution in the long term to tackling these rising energy costs. The cost of living crisis is a cost of energy crisis. You cannot produce anything without energy. But over the last 15 years, the Scottish Government, led by the SNP and the Green Party, have ducked all of the tough decisions required. They have focused so much on Scottish independence that we're now in a situation of energy dependence. We are dependent on hostile foreign powers such as Russia, people such as Vladimir Putin, because they have ducked the tough decisions to secure Scotland's energy supply, using the vast natural resources which are on our shores. On the subject of the national insurance increase, the new Prime Minister, I note there's no congratulations to the new Prime Minister in tonight's motion. She was, of course, elected in a very clear platform to reverse that national insurance increase. So perhaps that will be belatedly welcomed. However, noting the point that, that 1% increase is, during a time of cost of living crisis, that makes a big difference to people. However, it was 3 years ago that the Scottish Government increased the basic rate of income tax in Scotland from 20% to 21% using newly devolved powers. Not even for people on high wages. We're talking about people who are earning the median income in Scotland, £26,000 a year. There's no call on the Scottish Government to do anything in this motion. So on that basis, I don't think that this is entering into real cross-party working relations in good faith, and for that reason, I'll be backing the amendment. Thank you.
Can I now ask Councillor O'Donnell to read the amendment? Thank you.
I've already read the amendment, Provost, so it's just to talk to the amendment, if that's okay. So thank you, Provost, for giving me the chance to speak to this amendment. In my first speech to this chamber on the 25th of May, I said, to quote, that both Scottish and UK governments are struggling to solve the cost of living crisis. That remains the case. But to be clear, we will welcome any support through emergency budgets from either government, as long as it is significant and will improve people's lives. I also said at our first meeting that this administration was determined to support the people of East Renfrewshire through these difficult times. Indeed, this was our core manifesto commitment to the people of East Renfrewshire. Our determination has not changed, and since elected, we have been working with officials to develop plans to support COVID recovery and the cost of living crisis. The first phase of this was announced in the Flexible Local Authority COVID Economic Recovery Proposals, commonly known as LESA, agreed by Cabinet in August, and which provides a well-deserved boost of £1.5 million to local residents and businesses. I thank all members for support on approving that package. The second phase is much more complex and will involve consultation with a wide variety of stakeholders across the voluntary sector and beyond to make sure we deliver plans that are effective with the limited resources we have available to us. To that end, we have already put in train a cross-party meeting to review and input into our plans. And we welcome any constructive suggestions as part of that process. This meeting is scheduled on 27th of September, well in advance of when we hope final plans will be presented to Cabinet on 13th of October and enacted thereafter. I ask members to support these important initiatives to help our residents who are clearly in need. I ask members to kindly support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. And Councillor Devlin, are you formally seconding or do you wish to speak? Thank you very much for seconding the amendment. Now the debate will be opened up to all members, and just to remind you that you have only one opportunity to speak, and each member will have 5 minutes to speak. So Councillor Bamforth has indicated that she wishes to speak, so I'll look round the room and just let me know, and I'll put your name down and I will come to everybody. So Councillor Bamforth.
Thank you, Provost. I won't need 5 minutes, but I'll go through the amendments, if you want to call them in turn. The first one is the Tory amendment, and I can't make up my mind whether they're sorry, because you call yourselves on Twitter the Scotch Tories, so Scot Tories, so, you know, it's...
Could you speak through the chair, please? Thank you. Thank you. No, if you just...
He did comment.
Just call to order, please. Speak through the chair.
I can't make up my mind whether they are deluded in what they've said or are being disingenuous. The Tories have been in power for 12 years, and during that 12 years we've seen austerity like we've never seen before. And they talk of division. The biggest division in this country, sorry, not country, the UK is not a country, the biggest division in the UK that has occurred has been Brexit, and Brexit has caused a lot of these problems. To blame it all on the global, yes, there's been global issues, but the cost of living is not solely down to global issues. Brexit in this country has created huge problems. To go back to their question, I think it was Councillor Morrison who mentioned Putin. That would be Vladimir Putin, a friend of Boris Johnson. Several. Excuse me, could you call me to order?
Sorry,
keep interrupting.
I'm just about to. So, if you could put your microphone off, please, Councillor Bamforth, while I do speak. People have strong views. This has been recorded. Young people would look to our council to possibly be involved in politics or be involved in some kind of debate. So, let's show them best practice. And for all, we all have strong views. If you would kindly keep quiet while somebody is speaking. I know it's difficult if you have a thought and sometimes you just say it. Guilty of that myself. But I would ask you not to do that. So if somebody's speaking, they have the microphone, they have the chair to speak. So please don't respond either. I will deal with it. So I'll hand back to you, Councillor Bamforth.
Thank you.
Sorry, there's a point of order. I had my microphone off there, so I am repeating what I said. And it's Councillor Edlin.
Provost, is it in order for a councillor during a speech relating to a motion to make a statement which is blatantly inaccurate when she said the UK is not a country? Surely that is unacceptable to make a statement which is blatantly and obviously inaccurate.
Yes.
If Councillor Bamforth wishes to express that opinion, then she is entitled to do so.
Thank you, Provost. The United Kingdom is made up of 4 countries. So, to go back to Putin and Russia, we are all aware of Mr Johnson's government connections with Russia, and in fact, at least one of them has been elevated to the anachronism, which is the House of Lords. So I think we're all aware of the closeness between the UK government and Russia. To go on to the Labour amendment, Councillor O'Donnell is well aware that the Scottish Government have limited powers of borrowing, and recently we have used them to the max. Only today, making announcements, and several announcements over the last few weeks actually, including increasing the child payment to £25 when the UK Government did away with the child the child payment. They also scrapped the increase in rents, etc. in the last couple of days. So I understand what you're saying about powers, but I think the highest level and levers of power are within the UK Government, not the Scottish Government. So I am obviously in favour of the SNP motion and would vote against both the Conservative or Tory amendment and the Labour amendment, because I don't feel that they are reflective of the true, accurate position in this country. That is Scotland.
Thank you, Councillor Bamforth. Councillor Devlin.
Just for the record, the statement the Scottish Government made regarding the rents is inaccurate, because our rents are paid up to the 31st of March and there's no rent increases been implemented and will not be to the 1st of April.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin. And just to remind everybody that you can only speak once in this debate, so you might want to hold your fire. But I'll open it up to anybody else who wishes to speak. Anybody else? Yep. Councillor Ireland.
Thank you very much, Provost. I wasn't going to speak much on the Tory amendment, but Councillor Morrison, yes, until Councillor Morrison said that the Scottish Government had ducked the tough decisions. I don't think that's the case at all, Councillor Morrison. Through their budget in 2023, the Scottish Government has allocated £3 billion to a range of supports that will contribute to mitigating the impact of the increased cost of living on households. These include work to tackle child poverty, reduce inequalities and support financial well-being alongside social security payments not available elsewhere in the UK. And their resource spending review prioritises £22.9 billion for social security assistance. The decision was also taken to uprate 8 Scottish benefits by 6% and to invest a further £10 million in their fuel insecurity fund to support households at risk of severely rationing their energy use or self-discontinuing. Now, Councillor Bamforth spoke about the rents that have been frozen. There's also the increase to £25 on the Scottish Child Payment, free school meals for primary 6s and primary 7s. And rail fares have been frozen, but it's also very important as part of that package, because they've done all that. But they've done all that importantly, every single year now the Scottish Government is having to invest more than £700 million mitigating the impact of Westminster policies that Scotland did not vote for. Bedroom tax, the rape clause and the removal of universal credit. So there's a few wee things there, Councillor Morrison. I just wanted to point those out to you.
Sorry, Councillor Ireland, could you speak through the chair, please?
Thank you, Provost. There's a few wee things there, so I just wanted to point those out. The second amendment, and I actually really do welcome the second paragraph, because that touches on what we were talking about and we were asking for in the motion, because I think that probably is really important that we get a cross-party group going. And I think I'm probably going to have to get used to this, but I'm awful disappointed that you took out all reference to what's actually happening in the country today. And I know it's because of the situation that we're in just now. I know it's because of who you're working with, but still you took it out. And I'm greatly saddened by that. Now, I do think it is important. We should, as a council, note that recent significant increases in the cost of living, energy and other essentials follow on from a decade of austerity. You might not want to say it in your amendment, but it's true. Wage stagnation and the economic shock of COVID-19. UK Government has shown an inconsistent unwillingness to tackle these problems, and I do think that it needs called out, and that's why it's included in our motion, even though it was accused of sixth-form debating stuff. It's important that that's in. There's a whole list of things there from the Trussell Truss onwards that are happening to people day in, day out in this country, and it's important that it's said out loud. This motion asked for, and it's asked for a range of things that we asked, but it was to bring a further windfall tax and extend this to include all large businesses who made significant profits during the pandemic. But I sat today and I decided to watch PMQs because it was the new Prime Minister's first ever PMQs, and I watched actually a bit in disgust. As part of her very first PMQs, she absolutely very firmly declared that she will not be bringing in an enhanced windfall tax on large corporations who are making obscene profits on the back of the cost of living crisis. Indeed, energy companies are estimated to make £170 billion, oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say, in extra profits over the next 2 years. It's actually just heartbreaking. She simply refused to say time and time again, and oh my goodness, she was asked, that she would not be passing on these costs to consumers and businesses through deferral of bills for example, which may be one option she might use, but she refused to say what her options she's going to put down, and also whether it was just going to be more borrowing that she was going to tack on. Instead, she is deliberately making the choice to keep taxes low for the rich. This motion is incredibly important, and it must be passed to show the Council's commitment to helping our residents at this really, really quite awful time. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Lundy.
Thank you, Provost. I think this motion is really important as it's clear that not enough has been done to tackle the cost of living crisis by the UK Government. I welcome the fact that we have a new Prime Minister after the Government shirking its responsibility all summer during a national crisis. I also welcome the fact that the new Prime Minister says she's going to help, but what this motion touches upon is how we should go about helping people. The UK Government must bring in a windfall tax for energy companies and other large companies that have made obscene profits. The energy support cannot come at the expense of consumers. People are struggling, businesses are struggling, and the UK Government needs to take action now. I heard chuckles from the Conservatives when Councillor Buchanan mentioned the Conservative cost of living crisis. I accept that this is a global crisis, but the UK is suffering much more than comparative countries across the world. The support is too little, too late as far as residents are concerned. The future is looking bleak, and I believe it's important that the Council convey their concerns to the UK Government.
Thank you. Are there any? Councillor Hedlund.
Thank you. I commend Councillor Lundy for accepting that the UK as a country exists in his last speech. Could I say that Councillor Ireland did not mention anything about oil and gas in her speech about what the Scottish Government were doing, and it's noted that the Scottish Government in this whole crisis have not mentioned any way of increasing production of oil and gas in Scotland during this current crisis, which is the only long-term way to deal with the energy problem. And unless that can be dealt with, this country, and I mean the United Kingdom when I say country, not Scotland, I consider that to be a region, unless that is addressed, we will be in fuel poverty for many, many years. I would also like to say that the Union is a dividend of £2,184, I think it is, by having the union between Scotland and England. If that is abolished, everybody in Scotland will be that much worse off per annum. Okay. So, therefore, I support the amendment proposed by Councillor Wallace and seconded by Councillor Morrison.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to come in? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Provost. I think it's entirely clear from the level of debate that we've actually seen and heard that this is not what we need, and it's bickering and it's back and forth. Accusations, but our motion is fairly clear. It has 2 paragraphs that only the UK and Scottish governments have the financial firepower and fiscal tools to alleviate the burdens that we face. This is not doing us any good whatsoever to talk about the actual original motion. In the second paragraph in our amendment, it's clear that we are looking for cross-party collaboration to work together, and I think it's going to be a challenge given what we're hearing from the people around us. And the people of East Renfrewshire who are listening to this will be in despair, because it's bloody awful. So we should try and rise above this. Obviously, UK and Scottish governments have the power to help us, and it's been absolutely clear from both sides, even though one councillor on the SNP side said that the UK truly have the power to sort this, then another councillor talks about all the amazing things that they've done for the Scottish people. So which is it? So I'll be voting and supporting our amendment. Thank you.
Can I just sorry.
Before you speak, Councillor Pragnell, can I say to Councillor Anderson, you have to really watch your language. You probably didn't realise in the heat of the moment the adjective or sentence enhancer, as my niece calls it. So if we can watch the sentence enhancers, please, Councillor Pragnell.
Can I just add my support for the amendment, the Labour amendment? I believe that this bickering between either side isn't helping the people of East Renfrewshire. What we should be doing is getting behind the table, all parties in East Renfrewshire, and trying to address this crisis. I don't think the people of East Renfrewshire care if it's the Scottish or the UK government, but they have to both take responsibility for this crisis. So I will be supporting this amendment, the Labour amendment, as I believe the people of East Renfrewshire, we should be putting them first instead of bickering over party politics. Thank you.
Are there any further contributions? Anybody who hasn't spoken yet? You've had your chance, Danny. Anybody else? No? Okay. Betty? Sorry, Councillor Cunningham?
I'm just listening to the whole shebang. I'm glad I'm not there, you know. But I just feel this announcement's supposed to be tomorrow, and it's based on borrowing, right? Which my great-grandson was in the house when he says, "What does that mean, Granny?" I said, "It means any gas that I burn just now, additional, you'll be paying for it in the future." Right, because I just felt as though borrowing was one thing. There's plenty of options that could have been done without the borrowing, and here we go, mere debt. You know, so I just felt as though wait till tomorrow, but it's on the never, right, as far as it goes. And I just felt as though my great-grandchildren will be paying for it if it comes to fruition tomorrow, that we do get a fair settlement.
Okay, are you finished with that then, Councillor Cunningham? Is that you?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much for that. If there aren't any other contributions, then I will ask Councillor Buchanan to sum up, and you have 5 minutes for that, Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Provost. There's been some very interesting comments made, including that Scotland is apparently a region. Well, I view Scotland as a country, as is England, as is Wales, and the province of Northern Ireland, all of which make up the United Kingdom. So I think Councillor Edlin needs to go back to school and maybe take a few geography lessons. In terms of bickering, I don't see it as bickering. I think these are very real concerns that our residents and beyond East Renfrewshire have been suffering, and across the UK people are suffering and have been for some considerable time. Well, the only bickering I've seen that has been covered in the news has been that within the Conservative Party. And that, I think, is a disgraceful way to be behaving as this crisis gets worse on a daily basis. In terms of some of the comments made, and I have some sympathy with the Labour amendment, the difficulty I have is that it doesn't recognise that the Scottish Government has utilised all of its fiscal powers that they have. And even within those fiscal powers, they have a limited budget, because like us, they also have to balance their books in response to the finance that they get from Westminster. And that in itself is a difficulty, because that same finance, that same allowance, that, as they like to call it, has been impacted by the current interest rates. That in itself has meant that the budget settlement that Scotland received is 1.7 billion worse than it would have been had interest rates stayed at the level, or inflation stayed at the level of around 2%. That 1.7 billion is money taken out of the Scottish economy that could have went to help in the recent talks and pay negotiations. It could be supporting people just now to a far greater extent than we have currently been able to mitigate. And that's the significant difference when we talk about the fiscal powers of the respective nations of the United Kingdom. We do not have the powers in Scotland to go and borrow as a devolved country, or a devolved parliament, I should say. And that in itself is one of the most horrendous aspects of the difficulties that we currently face. And that's where I have difficulty with the Labour amendment, because it doesn't address that. It doesn't recognise that across Scotland, people are currently slightly better off than their counterparts in England, whether it be through free prescriptions, whether it be the benefits uplift for families. All of those aspects play a key role in ensuring of what this country and Scotland's government tries to do for its people. What is missing is support from the UK government, and that in itself is appalling given the current circumstances. We have came supposedly from recovery of one crisis, we are straight into another, which may be even greater than the pandemic that we faced in terms of the financial cost. And that in itself is appalling, that we are still waiting on decisions to be made, and we don't know what those decisions will be. And the likelihood is, as has been mentioned, and as Councillor Cunningham mentioned, that's likely to be done in borrowing or loans to be paid back, because that's the indication they've given so far, rather than tapping into the obscene profits that have been made by numerous companies, and in particular energy companies, over the last year. An appalling set of circumstances, and therefore I support our motion, which goes to the heart of it, to support people, to support individuals during this time, and surely they deserve the support of the government of the UK to come forward with a package which will be genuine support, not support in the short term that they have to pay back later.
Thank you, Councillor Buchanan. So we have a motion and we have two amendments. Councillor
Provost, just listening to that summing up there, I mentioned earlier on how divisive it was. I've got real concerns. We have three.
Point of order.
We have a motion and we have a motion and we have two amendments. So quite clearly, the party that's put forward the motion, having the greater numbers, are going to get this through. I'm more than prepared, in the spirit of cooperative working, shall we say, for the benefit of East Renfrewshire residents, to just pull our amendment, and just happy to vote on the motion and the Labour amendment, if that's in order. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace. So I'll now hand over to Eamon to conduct proceedings from here on now.
Thank you, Provost. If I can just get clarification first, for any amendment to be withdrawn, it needs the agreement of the mover and the seconder of the amendment. Can you confirm?
I think in the spirit of working together and removing party politics for this vital issue, I'm quite happy to endorse the motion in Councillor O'Donnell's name and withdraw Councillor Wallace's.
Provost, thank you. On that basis, we then have the motion put forward by Councillor Buchanan, seconded by Councillor Merrick, and we now have the one amendment put forward by Councillor O'Donnell and seconded by Councillor Devlin. I'll conduct the vote by roll call. I'll invite members to identify whether or not they wish to vote for the motion, for the amendment, or if they wish to abstain. So in alphabetical order, Councillor Anderson, please.
Vote for the amendment.
Councillor Bamforth.
Motion.
Councillor Buchanan.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Convery. Is Councillor Convery with us? I don't see her on this. No, she's not. Okay, she's not present. Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Devlin. That's the amendment from Councillor Devlin. Councillor Edlin.
Amendment.
Councillor Ireland.
Motion.
Councillor Lundy.
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor McLean.
Amendment.
Councillor Merrick.
Motion.
Provost Montague.
Amendment.
Councillor Morrison.
For the amendment.
Councillor O'Donnell.
Amendment.
Councillor Pragnell.
Amendment.
Councillor Wallace.
Amendment.
Thank you, Provost. The result of the vote is 6 for the motion and 11 for the amendment. The amendment is carried.
Thank you very much. We go on to motion number 2. And this has been proposed by Councillor Ireland and seconded by Councillor Bamforth. So we'll hand over to Councillor Ireland in the first instance just to read out the motion, please.
Thank you very much, Provost. It's quite a straightforward motion. That this Council will join workers, trade unions and communities in commemorating Workers' Memorial Day in East Renfrewshire. This Council welcomes that Workers' Memorial Day is commemorated throughout the world and, whilst officially recognised by the UK Government, expresses concern that more people are killed at work than in wars every year, calls on the Government to pursue stricter enforcement of health and safety laws, recognises that a strong trade union movement is vital for workers' rights in the UK. This Council will therefore organise a Workers' Memorial commemoration event every year from 28th of April 2023. The Council will also investigate an official cairn to recognise the workers lost here in East Renfrewshire. East Renfrewshire Council recognises the importance of the day, not only to remember lives lost at work, but also as an opportunity to raise awareness of health and safety at work and the key role that the trade union movement can play in this. Thank you.
Councillor Bamforth, can you confirm you're seconding the motion, please?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Are there any amendments? Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Provost. I'll try to use appropriate language this time. We would like to put forward the amendment that it be remitted to the Civic Hospitality Committee to consider the merits and options for commemorating Workers' Memorial Day annually on the 28th of April and to consider a permanent memorial in East Renfrewshire.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Is there a seconder for the amendment?
I'll second that, Provost.
Councillor Pragnell is seconding. I'll wait. Eamon goes round with the amendment. So the procedure is just the same. The mover of the motion has 10 minutes to speak. The seconder and everybody else has 5 minutes. So, Councillor Ireland, over to you.
Thank you very much. Just for clarity, I do not accept that amendment. I don't think it's appropriate. I welcome that it will be discussed at the Civic Hospitality Committee, but I think that we're more than capable of discussing the merits of it here tonight. I don't think it needs remitted to the Civic Hospitality to discuss the merits, but I do welcome that it's saying that we'll look at the options for commemorating. I've put forward some options, so we'll just I don't accept that at all. I did think, actually, that this one would go through a lot more straightforward. So, once again, I find myself saddened, but here I am. It seems to be constant now. I started off, and I think I touched on this at the last meeting, and I probably will several times through this term. I started off my political life as a shop steward. I was lucky enough. I didn't feel it at the time. I think I was just, no one else wanted the job. And I became the shop steward, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it from that auspicious start. I was in the print union SOGA and heavily involved with them, and it means an absolutely huge, enormous, great deal to me to bring this motion to the full council tonight. So again, saddened that there's an amendment. For 33 years now, the 28th of April has been the day during which people around the world pause, remember and commemorate those who have lost their lives in the workplace from work-related injury or disease, and renew their pledge to improve workplace conditions for the living. It's such an incredibly important event worldwide. To commemorate this in East Renfrewshire would be to not only commemorate any workers who have died or have suffered serious injury in workplace accidents, this would also express our determination to ensure the future safety and the well-being of the workers in our communities, something that's so important. International Workers' Memorial Day is commemorated throughout the world and is officially recognised by the UK government. The event started in North America in 1986, and it was the US Occupational Safety and Health Act. That's the day that went into effect, and that's why this date was chosen, and it's been supported wholeheartedly by UK unions for many years. The day is now a global event and is officially recognised by the International Labour Organisation and the International Trade Union Movement. It's important to note that all of our neighbouring councils commemorate this day, so we really are the last one. So that's why I'm, again, slightly saddened that there's people want to delay it. Anyway. In Renfrewshire, there is a plaque just outside of the main council offices and a cairn in Robertson Park in Renfrew and a yearly memorial event. In South Lanarkshire, a special wreath-laying ceremony was held at the council's headquarters, attended by trade union representatives, council officials and councillors, and a minute's silence was then observed by those in attendance. Additionally, in both Inverclyde Council and Glasgow City Council, the day is also recognised every year. Particularly relevant here to East Renfrewshire Council, and I wanted to make mention and use the platform, I suppose, to talk about the amazing men and women that we have working for us, who worked tirelessly throughout the pandemic and continue to do so, including essential workers in our health and social care partnership, cleaners, refuse workers who were fantastic. When they were out on strike there recently, I went and met some of them, and all the other council employees who ensured that residents had access to services that we require. They put themselves at risk, and their commitment is just humbling, and it should be recognised. Now, why did I feel that I had to bring the motion now and not before? It's because we find ourselves, and I hate to say it, we now live in interesting times. We are cursed with that. The UK's Health and Safety at Work Act was introduced in 1974, and the formation of the Health and Safety Executive followed with many important regulations through the European Health and Safety Directives, which were transposed into the UK Health and Safety regulations through the 80s and 90s. We find ourselves, unfortunately, on the other side of Brexit. Will any of these hard-won and incredibly important health and safety legislations be affected now? Can I just stop for a second and check that beeping's not interfering?
I was actually going. I thought you were coming to the end.
No.
Councillor Ireland, that was why your tone of voice seemed to be that you were coming to the end. So I was just about to intervene and do that as well. If you could switch off your microphone for a second, please, to see how we can deal with this. Okay, that's fine. It has been remedied now, Councillor Ireland, but if you wish to start at any point... All right. Eamon has advised it's not going to have any impact on the recording of what you have to say.
Thank you very much, Eamon. Thanks for checking that. Back to talking about interesting times that we find ourselves in.
Councillor Ireland, can you stop again? I think we're still having the same problem. I don't want what you have to say to be impaired in any way, so if we could just stop and see if we can have this remedied.
I think she seems to be on the phone to somebody else, and then when I tried to call her back, she can't get her now, so she's off the call.
So are we? Sorry about this. I'll bring you in again, Councillor Ireland, and once you finish speaking, we'll try and remedy that again. So sorry about that.
Thank you very much. It's interesting times on Teams as well. The Tory right wing have been given a new opportunity from Brexit, and there certainly appears to be a drift towards an extreme form of self-regulation. Further health and safety executive budget cuts, enforcement and inspection cuts post-Brexit mean that we now have an immediate threat as we race to the bottom. We simply cannot allow our important health and safety standards to fall even further behind those of other developed economies, and why it's important that we pass this motion today. We are supposedly a world-leading economy currently engaged in negotiating trade deals with the world beyond the EU. But instead, we have our very new Prime Minister reportedly considering a review of workers' rights as part of a wider bonfire of 1,500 EU laws she wants to take off the UK's statute books before the end of 2023. Indeed, her promise to crack down on trade unions and make it harder for strikes to take place has been slammed as a transparent, egregious attack on workers. In a leaked audio, she's also heard to say, and it was not up-to-date PMQs, that workers just need to put in more graft and they are lacking in skill and application. The TUC's Secretary-General, Francis O'Grady, said that ministers are threatening to rip up workers' legal rights while attacking their ability to defend their working conditions through collective action. We absolutely have battles ahead, as do our unions, in defending and protecting workers' health and safety, something that I feel is incredibly important. I would ask you to support this motion, as to do so would ensure that East Renfrewshire Council recognises the vital importance of this day, establishes the principle right here tonight, not at another meeting, that each year we all take time to reflect, not only to remember those lives lost at work, but also as an opportunity to raise awareness, to highlight the importance of safety at work and remind people about the needless loss of life and look at what more can be done to reduce the risk so that people are better protected in the workplace in the future, and also to let people know about the key role that trade union movement can play in this, especially given those interesting times that we currently find ourselves living through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. And if we could just pause and make sure that we're technically okay.
Unknown participant is now joining.
What are you talking about?
Councillor Cunningham, hi, it's Eamon again. Hi. Well, you dropped off for a bit, but you're back on with us now, so it looks as though we've got you again. Okay?
Right,
okay. Right, thanks very much.
Thanks, Eamon.
Councillor Bamforth, would you like to speak in support of the motion?
Thank you, Provost. Like Councillor Ireland, I'm saddened that this hasn't just been approved, because I agree. Perhaps the cairn could have been discussed at the other committee, but I think this should have been approved by everyone in the council. Am I surprised? No. Given the recent behaviour at COSLA, where Labour and Tory refused to accept the SNP motion of a 5% pay rise. I agree it can be considered a moot point since it was subsequently refused. However, they turned down 5% and together they put forward a proposal of 3.5% for council staff. I think that simple act showed how much they think of our council staff, and I find that very, very sad. As Councillor Ireland alluded to, a few of us SNP councillors, I'm not aware of any other councillors of any other party joining the picket line, but we spent several hours in the picket line just under 2 weeks ago, listening to the unions. And it wasn't just about pay, it was, as Councillor Ireland mentioned, it's about terms and conditions and health and safety and their concerns. And I cannot see how, under any circumstances, we can be refusing to accept and acknowledge the work, as has already been mentioned, particularly during COVID, and particularly HSCP staff, but our bin men who rallied round, all our staff who stepped up to the plate and more to protect our residents during COVID, that we can't commemorate them or recognise the huge amount of work they do. And I'm very sad that this hasn't happened, and I'm sad that there's an amendment that this should have been accepted. So I would hope that on reflection some of the other members reconsider and agree to this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, would you like to speak to the amendment now?
Thank you, Provost. Again, our amendment is actually quite simple, and obviously we have heard quite simply a lot of things that we're already aware of, and the Labour Party and the trade union movement have been hugely significant in actually bringing about the increase in benefits for workers and health and safety and everything. So for us, that there also are many events that have to be commemorated, and this is more definitely one thing that is quite simple. It should just go to the Civic Hospitality Committee to consider, and it will receive our support. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Pragnell, or would you like to formally second? It's up to you.
Yeah, I'll formally second it, and I don't think we're not saying that we're opposed to this. We're saying that it should be brought to the Civic Hospitality Committee. I know previously similar memorials had been brought to this committee, and I think it's up to them to discuss where the memorial should go, etc. So, thank you.
So I can now open up to anybody else who wishes to contribute to the discussion. And again, can I remind you, you can only speak once, but you have 5 minutes. Councillor Edlin, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. And I would agree with Councillor Pragnell's sentiments in this. However, since being elected as a councillor for the first time recently, I have been invited to and have attended 2 other commemoration events that the council has hosted, prepared and put on very expertly by Pamela Watson and Linda, I've forgotten Linda's name. And I noticed, thank you very much. At both of these events, one was Merchant Navy Day, UK Merchant Navy Day, and the other one was UK Armed Forces Day. And I noticed at both of these events, there was not a single member of the Scottish National Party, councillors here present, attending at either of these. So my question really is to Councillor Ireland and Bamford, is this going to be another commemoration event, another UK commemoration event that they will not be attending at the council? Let me say that I consider the responsibility of councillors to have respect for the organisations that this council has democratically chosen to commemorate. And that includes the British Armed Forces and the British Merchant Navy, because we are part of Britain, although perhaps Councillor Bamford has difficulty in accepting that. However, let me say that while I commend the idea that has been put forward, and I also commend the amendment on the process of it, what is the point of having another commemoration day that the party, the SNP, will not be attending? It's very obvious that they didn't attend the other events, and I consider it not only to be bad form, it's also an insult to the council officials who put on so much work to have them. I would note that amongst the other parties that attended, the Conservative Party also had the local MSP as well as the whole group present. Labour Party had many of their members present, about more than half of them at least. The local SNP MP attended neither of these events. So I hope that the SNP, if this event ever happens, they will, unlike the other previous two events, will actually be attending such a commemoration that they are suggesting.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Are there any indications within the chamber? I see that Councillor MacDonald wishes to speak, but for those in the chamber, if you could just let me know if you want to speak, and I'll come to you. I can see that. That's good. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Provost. Hopefully you can hear me through the microphone well enough. I just wanted to point out I'm deeply disappointed to hear that there is so much partisanship, particularly on one side of the chamber tonight. And what I would say to Councillor Anderson and Councillor Pragnell is that I agree with Councillor Ireland that I don't feel this needs to go to the committee for consideration. I think this is something that we could all unanimously vote on tonight. I find it staggering, actually, that we're actually witnessing what appears to me to be an amendment that is thrown up for no other reason than to defeat an SNP motion. And I find that when we're talking about collaborative politics and getting around the table behind something that we can all support fully, I find that deeply disappointing. And I think certain members should seriously consider, now that we've fleshed this debate out a little bit, that they might consider withdrawing that amendment so that we can support this motion fully across this chamber and support those in trade unions and working people. Thank you.
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Provost. I think it's just worth clarifying that the amendment does not alter in any way the original premise of the motion, contrary to what Councillor MacDonald had just stated there. There's no right to reply, Councillor MacDonald.
Sorry, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Morrison. Sorry, Councillor MacDonald. I have to ask you not to speak, please. I have to let Councillor Morrison speak.
Yep. Thank you, Provost. We are keeping the essence of the motion here, and what's the point of having a civic hospitality committee if it's not used? Presumably there are a wide range of events which this council lays on to commemorate particular civic events, and that committee should be used properly. And this is a commemoration with merit, so it should be considered as such. This is, of course, something which the UK Government already does. I'm delighted to support it. In terms of health and safety legislation, that was last reviewed, just to pick up a point which Councillor Ireland referred to earlier on. It was last reviewed by the Conservative Lib Dem coalition government in 2010, and since then the fatality level has halved. Now, one is too many, and that's the benefit of having this commemoration, is to raise awareness of that. But I think we need to set it in context that this level is coming down, that number is coming down, and that's great news for all concerned. So I'll be back in the amendment. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Councillor Wallace.
Okay, Provost. Yep. I'm kind of coming at this from two, possibly three angles. One, as a member of the EIS union, which I'm delighted to say, there's no shortage of people willing to run the EIS, unlike Councillor Island's union when she was involved. I think the members of the EIS will be much better placed having Des Morris running things than Councillor Wallace. But seriously, as a member of the EIS, I greatly recognise the importance of my particular union on looking after the benefits and the health and safety of me individually. But I'm kind of also coming from this as health and safety is something I actually teach at the college. And I would suggest that possibly the biggest change in health and safety, as we know, this goes back to the Industrial Revolution, in which conditions were absolutely horrendous. And by crikey, we've come an awful long way since then, thankfully. And a lot of these changes were thanks to the Health and Safety Act 1974, which Councillor Ireland alluded to earlier on. Because the big change there was, prior to that, we had things like the Factories Act 1961, which was all to do with processes and premises, whereas the Health and Safety Act 1974, when it came in, it was about people. The important thing about people, and then we had an upgrade there in 1999 with the management of the Health and Safety at Work Act, as I say, in 1999. Another thing is, my particular industry, meat industry, by crikey, with the changes I've seen in that since I started working has been fantastic. So there's been huge steps forward, and I would like to thank, the suggestion here that there's, sorry, is it possible to, there's some noise in the background, Provost.
Councillor Cunningham, we're hearing your voice just now. If you could, okay then, thank you. Yes, thank you. So Councillor Wallace is speaking just now, and if you want to make a contribution, I'll come back to you in a minute. Is that okay? Okay then, so we'll just go back to Councillor Wallace with apologies. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. As I say, I'm just coming at this from various angles, and I do understand the motion and greatly support what's been said there. But it would have made such a huge difference to give some degree of courtesy to the committee that we have there to decide on these things. I mean, I dare say we'll need a risk assessment as to where this cairn is going to go, for example. Sorry, that sounds a bit flippant. It's not meant to be. But really, had the councillors firstly given this committee their place, then perhaps we wouldn't even have to have this discussion. It would just be going ahead without a bit of grandstanding emotion, which I see seems to be what this is all about. I wholly support the amendment, and I appreciate the reasoning behind it. Thank you. Sorry, not the motion. Did I say the motion? The amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Provost. It's just what some of my colleagues have said. I do have some sympathy and a lot of empathy with the motion, because I myself have been involved in two quite serious accidents at work involving health and safety. So I do understand the need for it and what the motion's about, but I do also understand the Civic Hospitality Committee should be given their due courtesy and go through this in the first place. As Councillor Wallace said, we might not have to be there in the first place if they'd have been given their due process. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor O'Donnell, then Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Provost. I believe there is cross-party support for this initiative, but I'm not convinced that the way that the SNP have approached this is the best way to get rapid agreement on things. Why don't you come and speak to people rather than communicate via motion? I'm not sure that's the most appropriate or professional way to approach this situation. Councillor Bamforth yet again is misrepresenting the negotiating position at COSLA for her own political ends, and it has got nothing to do with this debate whatsoever. So it's quite sad to see that. And also, And finally, I wonder why the previous leader and Councillor Ireland did not raise this important issue when they were in administration, had clear majorities, and could have had this done and dusted by now. So, it is curious that it is coming up now. But as I say, I do believe there is cross-party support for this initiative. But we think at this stage that the best place for that to happen and for dialogue to continue is in the Civic Hospitality Committee. And I'm sure there will be support within that committee, and they will work well with officers to get to a solution that we can all agree with. But I think that's the best way to do it at in this occasion, and I recommend the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Provost. Again, disappointed in some of the comments that have been made, and I'll touch on a few of those. First of all, Councillor Edlin and his view that in terms of events that some parties haven't attended, and continues clearly someone whose courtesy and manners know no bounds clearly. I find it disappointing in that I know that in all my years as a councillor I have attended events on a very regular basis. It was unfortunate that the event just last week happened to coincide with a leaders' meeting that was called at COSLA, which I was in attendance at, and indeed the leader was in attendance at. Otherwise, we may well have been at that event, but we were there dealing with the negotiations that were ongoing in order to solve the pay dispute. So to make comments about people not attending over the years, I find quite frankly appalling. And he really should check back, because he will find that most of us that have been elected members over the years have attended these events and pay due respect at all of the events that we attend to those that have gone before us, whether that be memorial events or whether it be events looking across the board that this council has participated in. And so I find that extremely disappointing. In terms of the motion itself, I am surprised that it has been shortened and simply said remit to Civic Hospitality. The Civic Hospitality Committee may want to participate in deciding what happens, but the decision to do it should be from the Council. It's a straightforward motion. There is no grandstanding, as Councillor Wallace suggested. It's a motion to bring forward an event that we felt that could get cross-party support. And in the normal course of events, the motion would have been heard, ideally agreed, and passed to the Civic Hospitality Committee, perhaps, to look at how it would come forward, with the instruction that is contained within the motion. The Civic Hospitality doesn't make the decisions on it. It should be the Council that makes the decision, and then forwarded on. And that's why I'm quite perplexed in some respects by the amendment, because it bypasses, in effect, the Council decision, when all we were looking for was to say, if there is agreement, let us go ahead and do this, which seemed to me relatively straightforward. And as I say, I'm disillusioned by some of the comments that it appears to have brought out, because they bear nothing to do with the motion, and they do nothing as part of us as a council taking forward something which I think is important to our workforce and is becoming all the more relevant in the current climate in which we live. And I find it just extremely disappointing that the motion has not been accepted in good faith and delivered on in good faith. I find the amendment sadly disappointing and does a disservice to the memory of many who have been injured or killed at work.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Merrick.
I'll be very brief, Provost. Thank you. As I nearly said lifelong trade unionist, but since the very first day I worked as a trade unionist, what went on here tonight was absolutely heartbreaking to see that. People seem to be in agreement but can't actually say that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham, do you wish to say something?
Well, yes. I wholeheartedly support what it was saying. As being a former trade unionist and shop steward and convener of a factory, I was delighted to hear it. But the procedure within the council, to my recollection, was that that goes to the committee as far as being endorsed by them for the appropriate funding and how it would proceed. That is why it would go to the committee, the
civic hospitality?
Yes, that's right, which I was on for years, and there was many things that was approved, right, as far as going how it was formed and how it would be, what would be, whether it would be a plaque, whether it would be whatever, would be an appropriate place, for this to go ahead. And everybody else would think this is a thing that should have been brought forward years ago, as far as the workforce goes. So I would think that putting it to the appropriate committee was a council way of doing things, right, as far as why the committees were set up like that. So that would be one that would go. There are many requests have come in through that hospitality committee and been addressed. So I think, it's just one, it's just at the, maybe people because it's the right place, but it's the wrong place. It goes right to the committee, right, for the funding.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Is there anybody who wishes to speak who hasn't spoken yet? Okay, I will ask Councillor Ireland to sum up now, please, and again, it's 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Provost. Now, I was on the hospitality. I was a previous member of the hospitality committee. So I know that if this was passed tonight, that's where this would go. I didn't think that I had to spell it out. Oh, unfortunately, I did have to, but I didn't think that I did have, because that's normally where something, especially with the cairn, would have gone. It would have been something that would have been set. But this amendment says that it will be remitted to the Civic Hospitality Committee to consider the merits. And I'm sitting here, and this is a Labour amendment that I'm sitting with. I'm genuinely really shocked. I'm going to be doing that a lot, but I'm genuinely really shocked by that. I thought that we would get agreement on this one, and that's why I brought it forward. I genuinely thought we would get agreement on this. I thought that we would actually look at each other and go, yeah, why are we the last council to have done this? Now, I've got an awful lot to unpack from some of the comments. I'm going to turn to Councillor Edlin's awful comments. Now, I'm going to give him a bit of the benefit of the doubt because he's not been a councillor long, and I know that there's an awful lot to learn, and I know that there's a lot to pick up. But I've been a councillor here for the last 5 years, and I can assure you that I attended a great many of those events of which you speak.
Could you speak through the chair, please, Councillor Ireland?
Sorry, Provost. You're right, you do get slightly carried away. My own grandfather was in the Merchant Navy, and I used to sit and listen to all these tales about the Merchant Navy. It gave me great pride to stand at those events and actually watch the Merchant Navy flag go up. So to have Councillor Edlin sit there and say that is absolutely appalling. It's a couple of events, one of which I was not here, and the other one I was very unwell. And you sit there and throw that accusation at me. Sorry, Provost. You sit there and throw that accusation at me when I stood there and thought about my grandfather every single time that happened is beyond reproach. It really is. That's all I'm going to say on that. I'm quite disgusted by it. What I have heard from everybody is that everyone supports this. Everybody supports it. They just don't want to say yes tonight. Even though we all know that the Civic Hospitality Committee is where they would go if we passed it tonight. Councillor Buchanan was right. It is the proper way of things that we as a full council say yes to these things. I'm only asking that International Workers' Memorial Day, that we all say that we recognise it. And now, why now? Councillor Donald, you were asking, why now? Why did I do it now? It's because of where I said it when I spoke
Councillor
earlier.
Ireland, could you speak through the chair, please?
Apologies, Provost. I did say this when I spoke earlier. It's because of where we are in the world right now. It's because of what we're all having to put up with. It's because of the attacks on workers' rights. And it's the fact that I stood there with Councillor Bamforth and Councillor Lundy, with the strikers from our council that were out, and spent a long time talking to them. That's why I put this in. That's why I did it now. I didn't for one second think that I would have a Labour amendment to throw this out and put it to another committee to consider the merits of it. I would have thought that the Labour Party would already have considered the merits of this. I would have thought it was okay to do. As I said, everyone's saying they're in support of it. Councillor Wallace said he recognised the importance of looking after health and safety. Councillor Anderson says Labour Party, they have worked for workers' rights, but you're not working for workers' rights tonight. Councillor Anderson, why not support it tonight? If you're all supportive, why not just support it tonight? Is it just so you can vote us down? Is that it? So all the meat of this just goes away and it gets sent to committee to discuss, to consider the merits of it. Yes. I don't really have much else to say. I mean, Councillor Buchanan said it's that we did think that this would get cross-party support, and we weren't playing politics with it. Unfortunately, that's not what we've been given. It's not supported in good faith, as Councillor Buchanan said. So I just would implore you to support the motion, because it is that important. It sends a message. Thank you very much.
If there are no other contributions, then I'll hand to Eamon to go to the vote.
Thank you, Provost. The motion before the Council is as printed on the agenda from Councillor Ireland and seconded by Councillor Bamforth. The amendment as proposed by Councillor Anderson and seconded by Councillor Pragnell. Again, I'll call the roll in alphabetical order, and if you could indicate whether or not you're voting for the motion, for the amendment, or if you're choosing to abstain. So, Councillor Anderson. Amendment. Councillor Bamforth.
Motion.
Councillor Buchanan.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Cunningham.
Can't hear a thing.
Councillor Cunningham, you there? Asking if you're voting for the motion from Councillor Ireland or the amendment from Councillor Anderson. Hello? Councillor Cunningham, can you hear me? We're just going to drop Councillor Cunningham off and we're going to call her back, so hopefully she'll pick up and we'll come back to Councillor Cunningham.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Councillor Devlin. That's the amendment for Councillor Devlin. Councillor Edlin.
Amendment.
Councillor Ireland.
Motion.
Councillor Lundy.
Motion. Motion.
Hello? Hello?
Councillor Cunningham, can you hear me?
I can very faintly, very faintly.
Right. We're voting on the second motion. So are you voting for the motion from Councillor Ireland or the amendment from Councillor Anderson?
I mean, support the motion, but, you know, the procedure is the amendment.
So can I just confirm then you're voting for the amendment to remit to the Civic Hospitality Committee?
Yes, that's council.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor McLean.
Amendment.
Councillor Merrick.
Motion.
Provost Montague.
Amendment.
Councillor Morrison.
Amendment.
Councillor O'Donnell.
Amendment.
Councillor Pragnell.
Amendment.
Councillor Wallace.
Amendment.
Thanks, Provost. Just double checking the numbers. So it was 6 for the motion, 11 for the amendment. The amendment has been declared carried.
Thank you very much, Eamon. Now move to item 7, which is statements by conveners or representatives on joint boards or committees. And have statements from Councillor O'Donnell, Councillor Pragnell and Councillor Anderson. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Provost. This is just a quick statement to confirm to members that further to COSLA leaders meeting on Friday the 2nd of September that a revised pay offer was made to both Unite, Unison and GMB unions. As a result of this offer, the unions collectively agreed to suspend strike action whilst they consult their members with a recommendation to accept. This is tentatively good news, and I would like to thank all of our striking union members and non-striking members of staff for observing the strikes that did occur with mutual respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Pragnell, I understand you have 2 statements to make.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you, Provost. I will begin with the statement from the East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure Trust. Last week, the Board of the Leisure Trust considered the final accounts for the Trust's financial year ending March 2022. After what was again a very testing year with COVID and the various restrictions on the Trust's core activity, it is a great tribute to the hard work and the skill of the Leisure Trust staff that they have finished with an operating surplus for the year of over £750,000. I would like to take this opportunity to commend the Trust for that. At the board meeting, we also discussed the 4-year sports and physical activity strategy, which the Trust is commissioned to write on behalf of the Council, and I look forward to bringing that to Council for consideration shortly. ERCL recovery. The recovery of culture and leisure continues month on month. I noted previously that the recovery of swimming, gyms and fitness, which continue to perform well, with the latter continuing to recruit new members, especially amongst younger people. They now comprise almost of a fifth of the total membership, following the Trust's revised membership offer in response to the experiences of young people during lockdown. Libraries continue to increase physical visits now that events are reinstated and social bookings are once again being taken for community halls. Live active GP referrals have recovered to higher than pre-COVID levels, and the impact on residents is huge, as one resident pointed out. Due to osteoarthritis in my hip and the pain I was feeling, I had basically stopped exercising. Having been referred to Laura at Eastwood Gym, we sat down and went through my issues and concerns. In a matter of months, I can already feel the benefits, not just physically, but mentally as well. It's been a game changer for me personally, and I'm so pleased with the way things are progressing. Also of note was the Summer Holiday Programme. The Summer Holiday Programme, delivered by the Trust on behalf of the Council, saw 302 individuals participating. Over 200 children living in poverty were supported to participate in the programme at no cost, including 77 participants who were referred onto the programme by social work services. In the current economic climate, it is worth noting that 84% of parents reported that having a meal provided was helpful for their families. While their children tried something new to them, made new friends and seemed more eager and confident to try new activities. 100% had fun and enjoyed themselves. I will now go on to the Integration Joint Board statement.
Before you do, Councillor Pragner, could you put your microphone off a second, please? Thanks very much. It's just to confirm with you, many of you are used to acronyms and abbreviations. Just to confirm you with you, when you said ERCL, that was East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure Trust.
Yes, that is correct.
That's great. Thanks very much. And in your next statement, if there are any other abbreviations, if you could say them out in full, please.
Okay, thank you. I will now get on to the Integration Joint Board meeting statement. I chaired our Integration Joint Board meeting on the 10th of August when we welcomed two new members, Diane Foy and Councillor O'Donnell. We were advised that although the Strategic Inspection for Children and Young People at Risk of Harm in East Renfrewshire report was not published at the time of the IGB, we were pleased with the expected result. The Care Inspectorate published their report on the 16th of August and we received a grade of excellent for Quality Indicator 2.1, Impact on Children and Young People. The service has been graded as excellent with no significant areas for improvement identified. The grading is the top of the quality indicator scale used by the Care Inspectorate and awards this for outstanding or sector-leading service delivery. The inspection report has been published and shared with all members of the Integration Joint Board and council-elected members. The Chief Financial Officer presented the Revenue Monitoring Report, which provided a comprehensive overview of the current projected overspend for the year of just over £500,000. We are now seeing the full year impact of the increases in complexity and demand. There was also an update on the HSCP, Health and Social Care Partnership Recovery and Renewal Programme, and it was good to hear that 4 out of the 5 posts which make up this project team have now been recruited and work can commence at pace. We have had a good discussion on the content of future reporting on benefits and outcomes. We heard from the Clinical Director on the impact the Primary Care Improvement Programme had in East Renfrewshire. The plan also fully implemented and a number of additional staff employed to support services and reduce the impact on GPs. Our main successes have been in relation to vaccination transformation and pharmacotherapy and community treatment and care services. We also dealt with some governance papers and annual reports around record management, Integration Joint Board, complaints and Category 1 responders. Finally, we had a presentation by the Chief Officer on the National Care Service. The main aim of the bill, which was published in June, is to provide consistent health and social care support across Scotland. But there are some risks and we need to seek to influence these along with much unknown detail yet to be clarified during the co-design process. The bill provides a high-level plan with a commitment to work with people who use the services, their carers and those who provide services to co-design the framework for the National Care Service. The Integration Joint Board's response to the Health and Social Care and Sport Committee call for views was discussed at a separate seminar. This concludes this report. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pragner. Now ask Councillor Anderson to give his statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. This is a statement as a result of the Education Committee on 25th of August. There was a particular item we want to make a statement about, and it was regarding an oral statement of the 2022 SQA examination results. It's the first diet to be undertaken by Scotland's learners and East Renfrewshire's obviously also since 2019, and for actually 60-year students it's the first time they have actually experienced the traditional exam diet. We noted at the committee that the secondary staff had worked tirelessly to ensure that all the learners experienced a high quality learning and teaching throughout the year and previous years, despite the ongoing impact and disruption of COVID ensuring that any learning loss was overtaken and that young people were well prepared for the national examinations. The secondary staff provided a range of additional support to learners, including supported study, Easter school and Saturday classes. Also, the committee was pleased to hear about very strong 2022 results. In particular, there's 5 points that I just want to mention in the statement. At National 5 in S4, there were 77% of S4 pupils attained 5 or more awards or better, broadly equating to performance in this measure in 2019. At Eastwood High School, in particular, the proportion of S4 pupils attaining 5 or more awards at National 5 is the highest ever recorded for the school at 85%, and the highest recorded across East Renfrewshire in 2022. It's fantastic for the students. So Barrhead and Wood Farm High Schools also performed strongly in this measure too, with St Luke's attainment significantly improving from 2019. Also, at higher level, the performance of S5 pupils was strong, with significant improvement on attainment from 2019 for S5 pupils attaining 1, 3 and 5 or more awards, and the third ever highest levels of attainment in these measures. The proportion of S5 pupils attaining 5 or more A awards is the highest recorded since 2019, at over 17%. Several schools across East Renfrewshire recorded their highest ever performance for S5 pupils at higher, with Barrhead and Wood Farm High Schools attaining their best ever performance for 1 or more and 5 or more awards. William Wood High School recorded its best ever proportion of S5 pupils attaining 1 and 3 or more awards at higher level. Finally, at advanced higher level for S6 pupils, the proportion of pupils attaining 1 or more awards increased by around 4% when compared with 2019. Eastwood, Mearns Castle, St Ninians and Wood Farm High Schools recorded significant increases on the same measure from 2019. As the Education Convener, I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank all the pupils, parents and staff for their vital contributions throughout another challenging year for all in education, and congratulate them for all their excellent achievements. Finally, there's a final part of the statement is regarding a joint inspection of services for children and young people at risk of harm in East Renfrewshire. I would also like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the recently published report by the Care Inspectorate of Services for Children and Young at Risk of Harm in East Renfrewshire. The inspection highlighted a number of key strengths, including the strong partnership, working, enduring and trusting relationships, and the way children and young people were well supported to exercise their rights to make real choices in a matter or a way that was affecting their lives. I'd like to particularly highlight the sector in leading evaluation with services in East Renfrewshire, which was evaluated as excellent, and congratulations are to all involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anderson, could you put your microphone off, please? Thank you very much. So now on to item 8, which is appointments, and I'll hand to Eamon to go through the process as we've done previously.
Thank you, Provost. If we can deal with the first item on the first report in relation to appointments this evening, 8.1. They were looking for nominations for the local veterans champion, so I'd like to invite nominations from the floor for the position of local veterans champion.
Councillor Wallace.
I would like to nominate Councillor Kate Campbell, please.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Morrison, thank you. Are there any other nominations? No other nominations, so...
Provost, Councillor MacDonald here. I would like to nominate myself. If there was a seconder that might back me.
Sorry, Councillor MacDonald, I didn't see your hand there. Apologies for that. So Councillor MacDonald is nominating himself. Is there a seconder for Councillor MacDonald? Councillor Buchanan is seconding your nomination, Councillor MacDonald. So I'll hand over to Eamon to organise this part, since there have been 2 nominations.
Thank you, Provost. As you've mentioned, 2 nominations for the position of Veterans Champion, Councillor Campbell and Councillor MacDonald. So again, I will call in alphabetical order, and if members could indicate if they're either voting for Councillor Campbell, for Councillor MacDonald, or if they're choosing to abstain. So, Councillor Anderson.
Councillor Wallace. Sorry. Apologies. Campbell.
It's easy done at this time.
Councillor Bamforth.
Councillor MacDonald.
Councillor Buchanan.
Councillor MacDonald.
Councillor Campbell.
Councillor Campbell.
Councillor Cunningham. Hello?
Hello?
Councillor Cunningham, we're voting on the nomination of a Veterans Champion. The nominees are Councillor Campbell or Councillor MacDonald.
Councillor Campbell.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Devlin.
Councillor Campbell.
Councillor Edlin.
Councillor Campbell.
Councillor Ireland.
Councillor MacDonald.
Councillor Lundy.
Councillor MacDonald.
Councillor MacDonald. Councillor MacDonald, are you there? Okay, we'll try and come back to Councillor MacDonald. Can you try calling him in, Fiona? Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Councillor Campbell.
Councillor Merrick.
Councillor MacDonald.
That's me back now, Eamon. Sorry, I got cut off.
Okay, Councillor MacDonald, are you voting for Councillor Campbell or voting for yourself?
That would be myself, Eamon.
Provost Montague.
Councillor Campbell.
Councillor Morrison.
Councillor Campbell.
Councillor O'Donnell.
Councillor Campbell.
Councillor Pragnell.
Councillor Campbell.
And Councillor Wallace.
Councillor Campbell.
The result of the vote, Provost, is 11 votes for Councillor Campbell and 6 votes for Councillor MacDonald. So Councillor Campbell has been appointed as the local Veterans Champion.
Thank you very much, Eamon.
Thank you, Provost. The next item relates to nominations to the 4 COSLA policy boards. The policy boards are Health and Social Care, Children and Young People, Environment and Economy and Community Wellbeing. So I can invite nominations for representatives on the boards.
Could I nominate in block, please? So I nominate Katie Pragnell for Health and Social Care, Andrew Anderson for Children and Young People, myself for Environment and Economy, and Danny Devlin for Community Wellbeing.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for any of the positions? No further nominations, so those nominations have been accepted and they will be the representatives on the COSLA boards. Thank you.
Item 9, now Provost engagements. And I'd like to thank Deputy Provost Kate Campbell for being my substitute at an event. It didn't give us very much notice and I had another engagement, so thank you very much, Deputy Provost, for doing that. Item 10, review of governance arrangements. And I'll invite the leader who can comment on the report and move the recommendations, and then I'll invite any contributions from any other members. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Provost. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chief Executive and Eamon in particular, and probably quite a number of others, for preparing a very comprehensive report. As you'll see in the report, we haven't had a review of our governance structure since 2010, and with the new administration, it was completely appropriate to review governance arrangements. So this paper is seeking approval for new conveners' remits. The details are included of what's within each of these remits, following the reduction in the number of conveners. Agreement to retain a cabinet model of governance, and agreement for the terms of reference of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee to be reviewed. The paper sets out the background to the introduction of the cabinet model and reviews that were undertaken in 2001 and 2010, where no change was recommended. It highlights that the size of the cabinet has not been consistent over the years and has varied depending on circumstances. Explains that there's no uniform approach across Scotland, with 25 councils operating a traditional committee model and 7 operating a cabinet model, and highlights that even amongst those councils operating the same basic model, that there are local variations. The report proposes a new division of responsibilities for the leader and conveners, with new titles for 2 of the 3 conveners. The report also outlines possible changes in governance structure in the event the council were minded to revert to additional committee model. However, the report's recommendation is to remain with a cabinet structure. The report also suggests that the terms of reference of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee should be reviewed. This was recommended by the committee pre-election as part of the self-evaluation it carried out, and these findings were endorsed by the new committee in June. So I'll pass on to Lorraine if there's anything further you want to add, or open it up to questions. Just open up to questions then. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any contributions or comments from anybody else? Councillor Ireland.
Thank you very much, Provost. And thank you, Eamon, and your team for the report. I would probably have preferred a committee model, reading through it, because the vast majority of councils do it. But I do understand why you've chosen to keep it this way. I know there's only about 3 or 4 of you, so I know that you're keen to keep it as much control as you. I do understand why you've done it. I do have a question, though, and it is what Councillor O'Donnell's touched on. It's the Audit and Scrutiny Committees. Now, I did sit on when we did the self-evaluation, and it covered an enormous amount of topics, and it was really well done evaluation, Belinda. Phenomenal amount of work that she put into it. If this is in there, in the middle of that, I don't remember it myself, but if it is, and I'll take it that it is, that you're going to look at, because I think on page 93 and page 98 both make reference to reviewing the terms of reference for the Audit and Scrutiny Committee to ensure they remain fit for purpose, and also for reviewing the terms of reference for the committee's involvement in the call-in process. So my question following from that is, will there be any changes to the call-in process as part of this evaluation? Because it's an important aspect that the Audit and Scrutiny Committee has. It's not one that's been used that often, but it is something that is incredibly important. And I say that as someone who sat as part of the administration in the minority on the Audit and Scrutiny the last time. I did think that the way it was set up was done very, very well. So I do want to know if there's any additional information about what those changes, because I feel quite protective of it. I'm back on it, and I think that if it's working well, it shouldn't be changed that much. I am slightly concerned, and again, it's what we've seen tonight. both voted with each other on every single vote all the way along. You've appointed a Conservative as chair of the Audit and Scrutiny. I'm concerned. I have real concerns that there's going to be diluted. I know that's something for Audit Scotland to take up, but it would be remiss of me if I didn't express my concerns about it. So can anyone answer me as to what those changes are going to be to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee? Eamon, you're nodding your head, and I don't know. Thank you.
Eamon's going to explain about the call-in process and the other issue.
Thank you, Provost. If I can just reassure Councillor Ireland that the suggestion about changing the call-in process was only really in the context if it had been a move to a traditional system where, with there being multi-party members on a body, there would perhaps arguably have been no need. As if we are retaining a cabinet system, the call-in arrangements as they are just now would not be changed. In terms of what the review, I mean, we can't look into the future. The review will look at the terms of reference, and I think, as the report says, just to consider that the terms of reference of the committee are still fit for purpose. But any changes to the terms of reference would in effect be a change to the scheme of administration, which would need to come back to the Council for the Council to approve. So any changes would have to come back here for approval.
Thank you very much. Eamon, that's really helpful, but I will be keeping a close eye on that moving forward. I think it is a really important committee. Thank you.
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you very much, Provost. As the Chair of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, I feel compelled to say something here. This is not the first time that SNP members have called into question or stated things which call into question the validity and the effectiveness of an apolitical committee of this Council. And it doesn't serve the Council, generally speaking, particularly well. Now, Councillor Ireland said, I think it was the first meeting I chaired of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, that she had concerns. And I addressed that by saying that any councillor should do what they feel is necessary to ensure the Code of Corporate Governance has been upheld. Again, it's been stated tonight that Councillor Ireland is thinking about writing to Audit Scotland. Why don't you just write to them rather than talking about it? Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. I was just going to ask you to speak through the chair. Just a reminder. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Edlin.
My understanding is that the Chair of Audit Scotland and the Vice Chair both come from opposition parties, not members of the administration, which I think ticks the boxes as far as Audit Scotland is concerned. The Chairman being a Conservative, the Vice Chair being an SNP member. So I don't understand why there's an issue with this in any way.
Well, just to clarify, Councillor Edlin, when you mentioned Audit Scotland, I think you were referring to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee.
I meant concern about the appointment to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, that there should be no concerns about it because it meets the correct protocols.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who would wish to comment? Nobody else? Okay. So we'll agree the report and move on to the next item, which is item number 11. It's the annual statement on adequacy and effectiveness of governance, risk management and internal control systems. And the report comes to the Council each year for it to be noted, for us to note the statement. I would like to invite Councillor Morrison, as the Chair of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, to present the report and to make comment. Once he's done that, I'll open it out to anybody else who would wish to comment or question. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you very much, Provost. Members will be aware of the documents within the agenda papers. We had a good discussion about it at the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, and I don't have anything particular to add at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Are there any other questions or comments on this? I don't see anybody indicating. In that respect, the report is agreed. It's noted. And that's the last item on the agenda, unless tiredness has got the better of me. And I'd like to thank everybody for their contribution and for your attendance here tonight. Thank you.